We're here.
Woo!
What happened?
Hello and welcome to Wizards, Warriors and Words, a fantasy writing advice podcast. I'm Jed Herne, author of Across the Broken Stars, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, starting with Rob.
Hi, I'm Krystle Matar. I wrote Protagonist.
Mike?
Mr. Matar, and I also wrote Protagonist.
And Dirk Ashton.
I'm Dirk Ashton, and I
Sound like it does.
and I wrote all the books.
We're joined by Krystle Matar, who's dealing with a dog at the moment. So,
I thought that was a sound effect. You
no,
punch.
Krystle, if you want to deal with that, I can just pause your. I can just mute your video if you want to go off and deal with that.
That's
we can
probably
start talking.
why.
Yeah. Okay, so this episode we're going to be talking about a response to a listener question that A.M. Crenshaw sent into the show. They wrote, "How do you make a compelling villain?" And they just basically want to know what's our process for that, and the kind of specific ways that you can introduce or reveal the villains to set them up as interesting. They cited Darth Vader as an example of a villain who has a wonderful introduction that immediately establishes who they are, why they're a threat, and makes you interested in the story. So let's start off really broad. What do you guys think makes an interesting antagonist? I prefer the term antagonist rather than villain.
Just to start off, Darth Vader is actually a brilliant example, not just because of who he is and everything, but because of what he represents. He's this dark force that is literally chasing the heroes throughout the entire story. He literally drives everything forwards just by being this dark presence that is looming, that is, really malicious and dangerous, and he's literally chasing the heroes throughout the entire story. And that's actually something that I quite like to use in a few of my stories. In the second book I wrote, Colour of Vengeance, I literally have a character who was my Darth Vader character. He's this psychopathic Templar type character, and I literally wanted him just to chase the main character throughout the entire story, to have this constantly getting closer to ramp up the tension. So maybe starts like a week behind, and then by the end of the book, he's right there with him, and there's the big clash. I love that as a tactic to keep ramping up the tension throughout that book, having a constant chase of the villain getting closer, which was quite fun, I find. But that's not really.
You've done that with a few of your books, actually.
I must admit.
No, it is. It is. I think it's just a good type of. If we're going to categorize antagonists into different types, I think that's a good one to start with. Is that idea of the unstoppable force? It's the Terminator robot chasing you. It's the Darth Vader pursuing you. It's this horror monster that's closing in and is motivating the characters to get to the next location, to get to safety, to try to learn the way to stop them as quickly as possible. So that's a great way to have constant tension.
You don't
from a
even
villain
need
that
to
is
develop the character.
upstream.
That's one of the things. Exactly. Quite often, the way to have a good villain is to have a lot of character development around the villain as well as the hero to make them a realistic character. But with something like Darth Vader, I mean, to be honest, there's no real character development with Darth Vader in the first film. He's literally just, hey, here's this big menacing guy in black, and that's it.
Yep.
There's no character development for the Terminator.
But it works.
He is literally a robot that's just chasing them, but it's still a compelling, terrifying villain.
Absolutely. And I think a fictional example of this that's quite effective as well, I just finished reading Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie, which is amazing. Check it out if you haven't read it. It's great. And he has a character that's very Darth Vader-esque called Shanks, who is an assassin who's just relentlessly pursuing the main character throughout the book. And you feel a lot of tension because every time this assassin comes up against an obstacle, it's just not an obstacle to him. So you really fear for the main character's lives for when they catch up to him. Krystle, what's your thoughts on compelling antagonists? What do you think makes a good antagonist for a story?
Well, definitely that looming sense of fear, but then also sometimes if you can kind of relate to them and question yourself a little bit, I really like writing like that, where it's like, man, that's so bad, but I don't know if in the same position would I make a different choice. I don't know. And I like writing and reading really driven character stuff like that, where it's like, I mean, everybody likes to talk about the morally gray, but like we're all pretty morally gray if we think about it for a second. So it's just neat to play with expectations of goodness and understandable reasons for something not good. and then in Brightwash, I did the antagonist isn't so much any specific person as it is the entire system of their existence, their government, their power structure, everything is something that they're going to have to tear down. So that makes it everybody's problem, which is going to be really fun to dismantle throughout the series.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, I was just going to say, to echo that, like, I think it's great to think about the different forces of antagonism that can act towards a character. It doesn't just have to be this external character that's pursuing them. It can be their closest friends, closest relationships can also be a great source of antagonism, because quite often they're the ones that know how to hurt the main character the best. And that as well, the internal struggles that your characters face.
I keep interrupting.
And then... No, it's all good. It's all good. It's kind of annoying when it's like you're not in the same room. So I have experienced that pain quite a bit before.
But I like the man versus self as well, where it's like the antagonist is within, and you have to decide if you're going to be the antagonist or the protagonist in the story. And I think a lot of people talk about Blackstone Heart in that way, where it's not totally given that this guy's the protagonist, although he's the main character, so it gets a little muddy.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've actually kind of written anything with an actual antagonist. I tend to have, the good guy, bad guy thing mostly bores me, so it's usually just a bunch of people doing their thing. And there's not really a clear good side and bad side, because that seems unrealistic.
Yeah, no, but I read Beyond Redemption. That had an antagonist.
Yeah. Who was the good guy?
The good guy? Well, he was so much a good guy, but there was definitely an antagonist. It was, I can't even pronounce his name. It was the bad guy. He was quite clearly the bad guy.
There were several of him.
Well, yeah.
there were several of him.
Yeah. But I really think the main character in Beyond Redemption is a protagonist. You know, he does stupid things, but he's no less a protagonist than Clint Eastwood is in spaghetti westerns, right? I mean, or no less a protagonist, and basically he's just looking out. The man with no name is just looking out for himself and doing what he can, but he ends up, being a really compelling good guy, so to speak. And I think your main character, I can't remember his name right now. What is it?
Are you thinking the aging sort? Benedict?
Yeah.
I don't know. Surely it's Witchstick.
Bedecked. I think I said Bedecked or Bedecked.
Yeah, it's all good.
Gotta have that phlegm in your throat.
Yeah, and that's the ending of that is not nearly as grim and miserable as a lot of grimdark is. There's a little spark of hope in his actions there.
I think it's worthwhile clearing up. We are kind of using the terms protagonist, hero, antagonist, villain interchangeably, but the way I kind of see it, protagonist is just the people you're following in the story. antagonists are just the people or forces that are resisting their goals. So that doesn't necessarily mean that protagonist is a good guy, antagonist is the bad guy. Because, as Krystle, you pointed out before, like, antagonist society, that's just a force that's sort of opposing the protagonists, who are the people we're following. So I think, take the good and bad out of it in that sense, because as Fletch pointed out, that sort of doesn't lead to too many interesting things, and just think about it in terms of what makes good opposing forces to create conflict with the main character.
I wanted to play with multiple kinds of bad guys in the Protagonist trilogy. Now, if anybody's read it, they know there are a million characters in those books, but I've got like just the bad, nasty creature in Max that just does bad things because he likes it and because he wants to, and he doesn't give a shit. But then I've got kind of his boss, Claren, who's like kind of even nastier, but he's a lot more thoughtful, and I give him his own POV kind of things. So he has setbacks, he has to deal with those, he has to deal with other characters disrespecting him, even though he's, pretty. Claren is a mighty powerful character and has led all the bad guys in a great war in the past. And then I have another Kushi, who is supposed to be a really, really nasty and very nasty, and has been. I think that's a sound effect Jed just keeps
It's not a sound effect, I can tell you right now.
And I have him kind of questioning and kind of turning around. And there are a whole bunch of just mindless bad, but I really like exploring different kinds of antagonists. From, the thoughtful ones to the, mindless ones to the just plain bad. There are a lot of different kinds. And they do pursue my characters throughout the story, but they're not always there. And they aren't always what forces the main characters to do what they do. And I also have the good guys who have done some really nasty shit in their past, and some of them still do, but they're on the right side, right? So it's
or at least the side we're following.
Yeah,
we're following their side.
Right. So it's fun to just kind of play with that a little bit.
I think one of the heuristics that makes for a good antagonist is how much conflict is this creating in the story? Is this the person that is the best suited, or the force that is the best suited to tackle the weaknesses that exist within the protagonist? And a few years ago, actually, I think it was Lessons from the Screenplay came out with an excellent video about The Dark Knight, where they were talking about this thesis, about how the Joker is such a compelling villain in that movie because he knows the best way to target Batman's weaknesses, which is to target the people he cares about, to target the moral integrity of that city, and it's why he's a more interesting villain than someone who just comes along and is like, I'm going to blow things up for no reason. So I think when you're... And that as well, they're more complex, and you don't really know what his motivations and his backstory are. And that also ties into the fact that Batman's whole thing is he tries to understand people so that he can defeat them, and he can't understand this guy, which makes him so much more effective at being a source of conflict towards him. So I think when you're designing your particular antagonist in the story, like, ask yourself, is this antagonist the best suited to tackling the unique weaknesses that my character has? And if the answer is no, then maybe there's sort of a generic antagonist that could fit into any story. But if there's something that you can do to make that antagonist more tailored to the weaknesses that are within your character, that's really good. Like Darth Vader probably works in a lot of stories, would work for a lot of Star Wars characters. But he is particularly well suited to Luke Skywalker because, spoiler, it's his dad. So there's another layer of conflict there. Yeah, sorry, Rob. That was a big spoiler. Probably should have
Bastard.
put a spoiler warning on it.
Next thing you know,
Sorry for
telling me
ruining
that
Star Wars, everybody.
Sixth Sense, they were dead all along.
Oh. Have your parents told you about, like,
This is
Santa
the
Claus and the
spoiler
Tooth Fairy
episode, I
or
guess.
something? Yeah. Yeah, we need to slap a big...
But I think what you're talking about is when, like, if the character is quite often, like, the dark, the antagonist, the villain is the dark mirror of the
shadow.
the hero,
Yeah.
So, they can be a representation of what the protagonist could become if they fell to the dark side, or that sort of thing. It's a good way to
even what the protagonist is becoming in the effort
Yeah.
to best their antagonist. Sometimes they sink down to the same levels, and so you got to know your protagonist really well and know what they're afraid of and what they're capable of, and what line they wouldn't cross, and what you can put in front of them to make them cross that line. And then in that,
Yes.
you can build
Yep.
an antagonist or a system or
Yeah.
an event that really fucks them
Yeah.
up.
An antagonist almost has to be kind of tailor-made to your protagonists. It has to be the kind of person, creature, whatever that particularly can affect what that protagonist does. I have there's a kind of a final boss in Protagonist that I'll try not to be spoilerish.
Yeah,
but,
don't spoil it. I haven't read the last book.
You figure there's a motivation in what he's doing, but even more terrifying to me is like a true nihilist, right? Who just, you think they want something, power, riches, whatever it means, revenge, but a true nihilist who just doesn't care, honestly, if they win or lose, as long as they burn it all down.
How do you make that person interesting, though? I mean, the desires and working towards something, like character with a true nihilist. How do you get that?
Read book 3, and then you tell me.
Oh, that's a good way.
This whole thing has been an ad for Protagonist.
We all got schooled in marketing right there.
It's
Yeah.
it's more. It's
Yeah, I'm
more.
intrigued now.
I mean, I don't even know why I said that. He wrote the book. He's just fucking with me. He already knows. He did it, and he did it very well.
Classic.
I think I think I tried to get away with it, whether I did or not, by really just kind of revealing that toward the end, that trait of that character. So it's almost like a gut. It's like a gut punch. It came out last July, a year ago last July. So.
Are you finding that people are responding to it the way overall responding to it the way that you? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
that's a good feeling.
Yeah. Yep.
So he does make it compelling as the answer.
Well, I don't know, but
I know it's a little more in technical terms, like how do you make that work? How do you take someone who just wants to run the world? You go like, that's cool, and I can absolutely totally relate. But then to make them like an interesting character, they don't actually want anything.
Well, he's been around. He's been around for a very long time. He's been a bad guy on and off throughout
part-time bad guy.
history of myth and legend and the world, basically. And he's super smart and very powerful. I think it's mostly in his interactions with the other characters, the way he speaks, the way he acts, the choices he makes, I think are far more, are what hopefully make him interesting, as opposed to, just the fact that we get
just
this
the motivation.
that we get this gut punch at the end of what he's really, really up to. and has been all along, and has been preparing for this for nearly 20,000 years.
I think
literally.
you do succeed with it, and I think the way that you make the bad guy interesting, without spoilers again, is you make him interesting with the rhetoric that sort of like the conversations with the good guys, and the fact that he tries to make, despite the fact that he's trying to burn down the world, he's trying to make it reasonable. It's
he makes it trying to make it sound reasonable.
Yeah, so he'll be. It's essentially like
it's
an
a good
argument
idea.
with somebody who's like saying, "Stop burning down the world," and he's actually he's explaining his side of things in a way that makes you think, yeah, maybe burning down the world's not a bad idea after all. It's like
Thanks. I'm glad it worked
What's the
for you.
name in the Matrix?
It's kind of like
Agent Smith?
I don't remember.
Yeah, Smith.
Agent Smith in the Matrix, where he's talking about how we're all parasites, and you kind of go like, yeah, he's not wrong, though.
Yeah, you're not wrong, yeah.
He's not wrong. Yeah,
But,
yeah, he's not wrong.
well, that's like the
we-
Thanos bad guy, isn't it? It's kind of like, well, I mean, you can kind of see his point in that what he's trying to do is monstrous to beyond any sort of degree, but he's doing it for a reason that he believes is right, and he
thinks it's the right thing to do
in such a way that he can make you think maybe he is right, or maybe he has a point.
Yeah.
Because
he's the perfect example of the bad guy who is the hero of his own story.
Yeah. But funnily enough, it's also why in the second of the Avengers, his character falls apart because he loses
the population of the universe. That was insane. It's like, all you're doing then is stalling overpopulation again. It's like, you achieved nothing. That made no sense as a plot point to drive for him.
But it was fun.
It was cool. I loved it.
And creating issues with the societal collapse and everything.
I'm going to wipe out half the population to achieve this great absolutely nothing.
But it doesn't matter. It's the fact
That's probably
that
the
he
key
believes in it.
to...
Yeah. I think Rob's onto that.
That's the key
I think
to
Rob's
what
onto that. It doesn't matter the
Dirk
logic
was saying
behind
about
it. It's the motivations that we reveal.
Yeah, if he can
go ahead,
start out his
Krystle.
argument and make kind of a good point, and I think also nobody thinks they're the villain in their story. Everybody knows, or everybody feels like they're doing something for a good reason, and it's just whether or not people around them agree that it's a good reason. And so I think that's probably the key to making it compelling, is that this person really truly believes they're doing something important and meaningful, but also they're slaughtering half the population. So that's probably
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I kind of did the opposite, where you think it's for those kinds of reasons, or just power, but it's really that he just wants to wipe it all out. He's got a daddy complex.
Sometimes you just want to hit reset on the entire universe.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
it. Control
Yeah,
Alt Delete
it's really-
and then restart.
How
So we're going
many
to wrap
of
this
us
episode up in...
to the ground.
When I find a
even thought
spider
I'd
in
see.
the house, I want to burn it to the ground.
Yeah.
You're scared of
been
spiders,
there.
Dirk? Are you scared
Am
of
I?
spiders, Dirk?
No, I'm not. I wouldn't say scared. I don't like them.
I was going to say,
I don't
personally,
kill
I'm
them.
terrified
I
of
actually,
spiders.
if I can catch them, I will take them outside. But
I can't catch them. I can't get close to them. But I'm terrified of spiders, so I keep adding spiders into my stories. It's really weird. One of the villains in Spirits of Vengeance is literally a spider demon, and I'm terrified of spiders. So
Yeah, well,
There you
the one character I said just does really nasty, horrible things throughout is a spider, basically. Yeah.
Awesome. So we've got to wrap this episode up, but as we close out, I thought we could each take max of 30 seconds, because we are running close to the time on the free trial of this software. But max of 30 seconds to quickly describe your favorite villain, or favorite antagonist rather, in a book, specifically a book. So 30 seconds max each.
I want to go last.
Give us time.
Okay, I'm going to start with a choice that sort of like is not an antagonist from some perspectives, but is from the others. Glotka from the First Law, I think, is a fantastic antagonist who is... Most antagonists that create a sense of threat in stories have some sort of physical strength. Glotka is great because his strength is totally mental and social. And I love the fact that he's able to manipulate other people just through his words while being physically quite weak. And also the fact that he does horrible things, but you're also really excited when he tortures people. Rob, do you want more time to think?
I've got a clue.
And come back to you. Okay, does anyone else have theirs to go?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yep, Krystle, go for it.
Okay, I'm going. Okay, so
Krystle, you're up.
I think of David Gemmell, his book Stormrider. The antagonist in it is Cernunnos, the Celtic god, and it's the same sort of thing where it's like he's wanting to destroy and wipe and just like do a reset, but it's done really well, and it has that same conversation of, you know, he's talking to the main character about why he wants to do this, and you're like, yeah, you're not wrong. So it's that same thing of just like, I think if I were that powerful, I don't know, I feel like I can relate to this guy. So there you go.
Fair enough. There you go. Dirk or Mike, do you have one to go off with?
Go, Mike.
I was thinking Marith from Empires of Dust, Anna Smith Sparks stuff. I mean, he's kind of a main character. He's kind of the bad guy. And he's just this sort of junkie with power. I fucking love those books and how well he was written, and sort of the his love interest's eventual sort of her character arc. It kind of was really for me about her and not him at all, even though he's like the sort of reborn, god in waiting or whatever you want to call him. But yeah, that was awesome.
Cool.
I think I was like, oh no, I can't do this. Oh yes, I can. I'm going to go oldest school. Sauron and the Nazgul from Lord of the Rings. I remember just being mortified by those Nazgul and that weird little sword that the one sticks Frodo with, and they just creeped me out a lot, and still are just really, really nasty. And they're like smart, and they're driven, and they're like conscious but not conscious, and just these driven, unstoppable forces. So yeah,
nice. It's a cool choice, Rob.
Okay, I think I'll probably go with Captain Kennett from the Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb. He's a villain that definitely has stayed with me throughout the years, because he's a despicable person doing absolutely horrific things, and he's a pirate. But he's so charismatic that you kind of find yourself leaning towards him, even as he's doing these absolutely horrible things, and you find yourself drawn to him. And the way that Robin Hobb manages to sort of like get across his point of view, why he's doing things, his backstory, is, all of that lot throughout, and it just makes you sympathise with him. Again, despite the fact that he is horrific. So,
yes. All right, great. So yeah, listeners, let us know what villains or antagonists do you find very compelling. You can either write it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or send us an email, wizardswarriorswords@gmail.com. If you would like to help support the show, you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/wizardswarriorswords. There's also a link in the show notes below. And for a monthly donation on Patreon, you can get access to free advanced reader copies of our books, and a whole bunch of other goodies as well. So, as we wrap up this episode, thanks, Krystle, for joining us. Really appreciate your presence. And
Thank you very much for having me.
Say goodbye.
And my dog.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully that gets edited out a bit. We'll see how that goes. And thank you, everybody, for watching or listening. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, so...